Welcome to Extension Connection on Super Talk 1270. Thoughtful information and discussion with experts from both Burleigh and Morton County Extension Service offices. Extension Connection provides advice on family nutrition, issues in agriculture, lawn and garden, community leadership, homeowner concerns, and so much more. Live from the Super Talk 1270 studio, this is Extension Connection.
All right, welcome to the Extension Connection. This is Amelia Dahl from Burleigh County Extension, and I'm joined today by Chandra Zeman-Belinsky. And we have kind of a modge-podge of things to talk about, but it's kind of that season where everything we're going to be talking about, kids are out of school, we're cooking large food buffets. So we have all sorts of stuff we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to talk about is screen time with your kids.
This is a good one.
A lot of kids this year for Christmas are probably getting a tablet or an iPad or an iPod or any kind of electronic device. And so it's important to monitor the amount of time your child spends in front of that screen. And a screen is defined as a television, computer, handheld device, or any other technology with images on a screen. So people think, well, if my kid's playing the Wii, that's not screen time because he's active. But it is actually screen time because there is that screen in front of that child.
Right.
They say that kids under 2 should have no screen time. And kids over 2 should limit that to no more than 2 hours. And even adults should be limiting their screen time. And if you think about, most of us spend 8+ hours a day in front of a screen at work. So we've probably already maxed out our amount of screen time. But a lot of us are notorious for going home and checking Facebook, watching TV, playing on our tablets. So it's important to be mindful not only of our own personal screen time, but also your children's screen time. There are a few big reasons why you want to limit screen time. It has been too much screen time has been linked to obesity, because especially since watching TV is a sedentary behavior.
Yeah.
And so children should get at least 60 minutes of activity each day.
Right.
And more if able to.
And that message is in the school, so your child might even be able to tell you that. I'm thinking at least from 2nd grade on, maybe even kindergarten they learn that.
Yeah.
So that'll help you out.
So it's important to be active. It also leads to irregular sleep. I just recently did a webinar at work where they talked about how screens can actually influence your body's ability to kind of shut down. Because as humans, our bodies are designed to go with the rising and the setting of the sun. So we wake up when the sun wakes up and we go to bed when the sun goes to bed, which if you did that in North Dakota, you'd get to sleep in till 9 o'clock in the morning and you would go to bed at 5:30 in the evening.
Right.
But having that screen creates a artificial sunrise, so to speak. So there are actually apps that you can install on your tablet or on your phone that help simulate twilight, so it slowly dims to kind of help your body get in to that mood.
Okay.
But lower grades and lower academic performance are also a big reason to limit screen time. Children with TVs in their bedrooms statistically perform worse on tests than their counterparts who don't have TVs in their rooms.
Very interesting.
So, I don't know, growing up, did you have a TV in your room?
No.
No, I never had a TV in my room. My freshman year of high school, I won a TV and at prom, and it was really cool because it was a VCR, DVD combo TV.
So you did have one when you were older.
I was older. I had it in my room, but I wasn't allowed to watch anything on it.
Okay.
Like, it was still a very restricted thing. And we think about kids nowadays who have tablets. So it's really important to make sure that when your kid goes to bed that you know exactly where that tablet is. My son has a tablet, but it gets charged downstairs on the kitchen counter. It does not go up into his room. Because I know that he would stay up all night playing on it, and then nobody wants to deal with a 4-year-old who didn't get sleep.
Yeah.
And this last one kind of pertains back to the obesity, but less activity time for children. They don't spend as much time being active, and it also limits creative play. So if you think back to when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to pretend playing?
Well, I don't know, but the first thing that came to mind, honestly, was tag. I love tag. So then we'd pretend that we were, fast animals or something.
Yep.
I mean, I remember being outside a lot.
Yep, and kids aren't outside as much now as even when I was growing up. And in North Dakota, especially this time of year, it's not really conducive for your kid to be outside because they can be outside for like 15 minutes before they're freezing. And so we need to work on things that we can do inside our house that not only keep kids active, but keep them away from that screen. Because I've found we've had to put William on like a detox from his tablet. He doesn't have it very often, but we do every once in a while just take it away for a few weeks. And you really see the increase in playing with things like his play kitchen downstairs and building things with his Legos. And then he also behaves better. And so if you are a parent that has a kid with a tablet or who uses your tablet, make sure you're limiting that time so that you are promoting that creative play and active play. So that's easier said than done in North Dakota. But when we come back from our break, we're going to talk a little bit about some cheap, fun ways to spend time at home, be active with your kids that don't involve a screen.
Right now, 19.
Weekends with Gary Sullivan, Steve Thaw, and Dr. Bob Martin on Super Talk 1270.
All right, welcome back to the Extension Connection. You're joined today by Amelia Dahl. I'm the 4-H Youth Development Agent over in Burleigh County. And today with me is Chandra.
Good morning, everybody. Family and Consumer Sciences Agent. Later on, we're going to talk about cooking your holiday meal.
Yep. Before the break, we were talking about limiting your child's screen time and kind of some of the effects that can have on their development. And now we've said get your kids, be active. But like we said before, that's kind of tough to do in the North Dakota winters. But young children need to explore, move, manipulate, smell, touch, and repeat. That's how they learn. So if you think of even something as basic as language development, we learn by having conversations and seeing other people conversate and actually experiencing that. So if your child is constantly watching TV, you may see delays in speech because they aren't having that time to interact with even inanimate objects. When we see younger kids, they like to talk to their babies. They like to talk to even their blocks, make noises with cars. So they're missing out on that opportunity to kind of feel and move and manipulate that stuff. So here are some ideas of things that you can do that allow them to do that aren't going to break the budget and are things that you can do when they've run out of time to play with the box that they got. Yes.
Because everybody has this issue.
Yes. One of the best things, I think, especially with Christmas coming up, there will probably be boxes. And my kids, that's probably the best thing ever to have in the house.
Yeah. That and paper towel rolls.
Yes.
Simple things.
Things you're going to throw away. My 4-year-old loves to go through the recycling bin and make things out of stuff that's in the recycling, which is perfect because he gets a little more entertainment out of it. And then when he's done, we can pitch it into the recycling bin. So when you have a box, what I like to do is I like to put my kids inside of it, give them some crayons, let them go to town on coloring it. Because not only are they being creative, but they're also using those fine motor skills of coloring, which we aren't doing as much of because a lot of our interaction is, like I said, with a computer. And so adults are even need to be taking a step back and coloring using actual crayons or color pencils or markers, what have you.
You just gave me permission to color because I love doing that.
Coloring is a huge stress relief.
Yeah,
and
maybe that's it.
And so even if you're going to give your kids some crayons to color with, sit down and color next to them. They're going to think you're really cool for coloring next to them. A fun thing to do, and we just got a new layer of snow last night, is to put some food color and some water in either a squirt bottle or like a ketchup bottle and let them go outside and draw pictures in the snow. It's going to melt away. You may have a little green on your grass, but it's going to wash away when it rains. And so it's a fun thing to do, and most of us have food coloring in our house. If it is too cold to go outside, one of the things you can do is you can bring the snow inside, put it in your bathtub, and let them sit on the outside of the bathtub and play with the snow.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to play with snow, and you play with it in the bathtub, and it's going to melt, and it's going to go down your drain, and you're not going to have a big mess to clean up.
It's a good one.
If we don't have snow on the ground, which we didn't for a while, having a snowball fight with socks is a lot of fun. So ball up socks and then throw them at each other, have a snowball fight. If you have younger kids, a really good activity to help with fine motor skill development is to give them your colander out of your kitchen. So this is a good one to do when you're cooking and they want to be right there next to you, and some pipe cleaners. And what you'll find kids do is putting them through the holes and working on, stringing them and building different things. Older kids would like this because they can create something out of it, and it's not going to cost you anything. You can get your pipe cleaners back, straighten them out, and use them for another project. Another thing to actually be active, and this would be good to do with your kids, is make an activity dice. So take a box, put 5 jumping jacks, do
on one side.
do different activities on all 6 ties, have them roll the dice, and that's the activity that you do, and do it alongside with them. They're going to have a lot of fun.
That's a good idea. Yesterday I was in 2nd grade, and we did a little Energizer. We usually, when we're talking about nutrition, we incorporate physical activity, and it's fun if you think about doing a physical activity through food. The imagination gets real. It can go wild, and so you can say that you're swimming in a pool of Jell-O, and then do it, and then have them freeze, and then you can have them pretend that they're stomping through a puddle of pudding, or so pretend that they're popcorn popping. So that
is fun.
That's a fun one. Yeah,
and it makes them giggle, which laughing is some of the best medicine.
Right, and then you'll start asking, "What do you want to do?" And and then they'll really come up with some things, and you'll learn about their mind too.
So we talked about things to do with a box. Some other packing material that we probably see quite a bit of during the holiday season is bubble wrap.
Yeah.
And I want to do this. I saw this online, and this is something I want to do. So take your bubble wrap and run it down like a hallway or something, and then walk on it, or do the worm down it, or log roll down it. I think it sounds like a ton of fun.
It does.
And who doesn't like to pop bubbles?
I know. Who doesn't? I have never met anybody who doesn't like to pop that bubble wrap.
Yeah. Another one, I saw this one, and this is probably for your older kids who you can explain, like, be careful. But take your shirt, put it on your kid, and then stuff a few pillows underneath it, and then they can sumo wrestle. I think it, again, sounds like a lot of fun. And then the last thing is cooking. And so
cooking with your kids, right?
Cooking with your kids. Yeah.
That's a great
kids
one.
love to be involved with whatever their parents are doing. Hence the reason that if you're sitting in front of your tablet, they're going to want to sit in front of their tablet. So if you're in the kitchen cooking, they're going to want to be in the kitchen cooking. And during the break, Chandra and I were talking a little bit about getting your kids involved. And my kids have always been involved in the kitchen, even before they were 1. Kids like to dump things, and so that's a good activity to measure out all the ingredients and have them dump them into the mixer bowl. That's something easy that they're not going to really mess up.
Sure.
Because if they spill a little flour on the counter, well, add a little more flour.
Right.
But when you are cooking with kids, be sure to be careful about the stove being hot, knives being sharp. Depending on the child proofing of your kitchen, you may need to have to do some tweaking to ensure that that is a safe environment for kids.
Handles and
and depending on what they're helping you cook, you also need to focus on the food safety part of it. One great thing to have kids help you make in the kitchen is goodies to take to your neighbors, because you're not going to have to worry. You can make easy things like having them put Rolos in the center of pretzels. That's something that's easy, doesn't require a knife, doesn't require an oven, but they feel very involved and like they've done something. And then to see them deliver it to your neighbors is probably one of the best things to have. But if your kids aren't helping you in the kitchen when you are serving a large meal, which totally understand, we need to be mindful of food safety. And so, Chandra, you have a few tips and tricks for us as we get into that.
Yeah.
Put out the turkey and the dressing and
whatever
you're serving.
Making your holiday meal, right. So Amelia said your mom's making turkey this year and they're smoking it.
Yes.
Your dad will smoke it.
My dad smokes it.
And then I believe we're having turkey too. We did have Christmas with one side of the family, and we had a bone-in ham that was fantastic too. But, I think if we were to, put it in a nutshell here, the most important utensil you can have when you're making a large meal is
A thermometer.
a food thermometer. Amelia's so good at these things. Good thing we weren't going to give out a prize or anything. But honestly, if you don't have a food thermometer, you should call us at 221-6865. I have a couple extra in my office, and I would be happy to send you one out. We do have those that need to be calibrated. We can talk about calibrating with an ice point method a little bit later. But that food thermometer can save your life, and it really is that serious. Let's talk about the 4 fundamentals of food safety, because as you're making your meal, you want everybody to be safe. And in years past, I want to say decades past, we might have not placed an emphasis on this, but we know more today, and we want to learn from our mistakes, and especially from others' mistakes. So the 4 fundamentals are clean, separate, cook, and chill. And that's the Fight Bacteria campaign federally that we recognize as well with an extension. And what we mean by clean is that anytime you're going to touch any food with your hands, you wash your hands right away. You also want to wash your surfaces. And you can just use a warm water and a detergent to wash the surfaces. And if you're really savvy, because just washing your surfaces with detergent and water does not actually eradicate the bacteria. It doesn't get rid of it. So it is actually good to have a sanitizer. You choose if that's appropriate for your environment. It's a requirement commercially. And if you choose to take that into your home, I have seen sanitizers. You can make a sanitizer at home with bleach and water. So it's 1 tablespoon of bleach to 1 gallon of water. And that's the appropriate mix so that you don't have to wash it off. The point is that once it's air dry, it's then clean. And it's clean in the sense that no bacteria should be there.
And that's something that you need to mix fresh each time, right? That's not something I can mix and sit on my counter.
Yeah.
And save for eternity.
That's true. And I don't have the time frame in which it breaks down, but anytime you have 2 different things, I'm going to say, liquids mixed together, there's always a chemical reaction going on. So chemically, that bleach is breaking down, and it's not as functional the longer it sits there together. So that's true. I used to work at a daycare at the University of Minnesota where I did my undergrad studies, and every day we had to mix our sanitizer. And it was actually the same thing. It was a bleach and water sanitizer.
And bleach is not expensive at all. And you're only using you said a tablespoon?
Tablespoon into a gallon. I mean, you can even scale it down.
That's a lot of sanitizer for a very low cost.
Yes.
So if you are, and especially if you're doing a large scale thing and you want to ensure that you're protecting, that's a good tip to have.
That's right. And so when you're talking about sanitizer, and then we'll take a break here, but there's 2 ways to sanitize: chemically, which it would be bleach, and sometimes you look at that word as kind of an off-putting word, chemically, but you mix it appropriately, and we know that that's safe. It's been around for years and decades. The other way is by heat. So of course, if you have a dishwasher in your home, it gets up to a higher temperature that is considered a sanitizer. There's actually a heating element in most dishwashers. You'll see it at the bottom. It looks kind of like the heating element in your oven. And so that's another way to sanitize. All right. Well,
it's also a way to melt your spoons that fall down there.
That's true. Yeah, watch for anything. I know. I have to be careful of some of the different Rubbermaid Tupperware. It has to be on the top shelf.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Fight Back campaign and keeping everything safe in your kitchen this holiday season.
Right now, 19.
Super Talk 1270. On the go and wherever you are at supertalk1270.com.
All right, welcome back to the Extension Connection. You're joined today by Burleigh County Extension. This is Amelia Dahl, I'm the 4-H Youth Development Agent. And before the break, Chandra, our FCS agent, our Family Consumer Science agent, was talking a little bit about how to make sure that the food you're preparing for the holiday season is safe. So we talked a little bit about cleaning. What's our next C?
Yeah, so we have the Fight Bacteria campaign, which is recognized nationally, and they recognize 4 pillars to preventing food safety. If you miss one of these steps, people will get sick. There's no question. And so they break it into clean, a clean environment. That's washing your hands and your surfaces, all of your cooking utensils. Let's get into separate. We'll elaborate here. We also will talk a little bit about cooking and chilling. So that really has to do with time and temperature. So separate, well, what does that really mean? Okay, so you want to separate, especially to prevent cross-contamination. And the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is make sure that you're using separate dishes for your raw, turkey, for example, and then a separate dish, of course, when it's fully prepared and fully cooked. So you're not using the same plate because that touched raw poultry. And we actually know statistically, this is a statistic from the University of Nebraska Extension Program, 1 out of every 4 times that you prepare poultry, poultry in general, specifically chicken, I know, has salmonella in it. So we know salmonella is there. And actually,
that's not something to mess with.
No, it isn't. Salmonella is a pathogen, which means that it only takes a little bit to really pack a punch and get somebody sick. So when I went down to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln specifically, this was a little over a year and a half ago. I was pregnant with Drake at the time. We did an experiment. We actually went to the store. We bought chicken breasts and thighs, and we plated them in a laboratory. And we did have 1 out of the 8 that we plated come up positive for salmonella. This time it wasn't 25%. It was just, about half that. But I tell you, it was alarming to see that, right? So it happens at your grocery store. So the point is here was separate that, and this really came out pretty strongly a year ago and even a couple years ago. The USDA does not recommend that you rinse your poultry. We used to do this. We used to rinse it, especially when you're plucking it, from when you actually do the kill at your own farm. And that's slightly different. But when you pull something out from the store, which is the majority of us, you take off the packaging, do not rinse that bird. And the reason for that is because that water, the droplets water is a medium of transport. So it's really just moving that bacteria around. So you can't be in control of every droplet, and that's all it takes in order to spread salmonella.
And you're not going to wash salmonella off. It's not that easy to get rid of it.
Right. And actually, before the break, we were talking about a sanitizer, and this is one of the reasons why you want a sanitizer, because just using detergent and water does not kill that bacteria. And I don't want you to get too worried at home, but I do want you to be safe. So the point of detergent is that you're getting rid of all of, we call it in the industry, biofilm, really just all those food particles. You're getting rid of the food particles, and that detergent helps mix the water that you're using in your dishwater along with the oil, and it attracts everything and moves it away. It gets rid of the biofilm or the food particles. But what happens is it doesn't kill the bacteria. Okay, and so if you have kind of a dirty dish rag, it actually could increase the amount of bacteria that you're spreading on your surfaces. That's why we go back to don't rinse your turkey and use a sanitizer in the kitchen. Like I said earlier, it's required in a commercial environment. You choose in your home, but that would be a savvy food safety home if you chose to have one. A sanitizer. So I know that one of my girlfriends, Deb, she actually has right next to her detergent on her sink, she has a sanitizer dispenser. So, that's an easy way to do it. So separate, don't cross-contaminate, don't use, I'm going to repeat it because it's an important message, don't use the same container for your raw, where you're going to the oven with your raw turkey that you would use for your cooked turkey, unless it was used to cook in it, because then, of course, it hasn't been moved to a different surface.
And I think we see this a lot when people are grilling in the summertime.
Grilling.
They take the food out to the grill and they stand there, watch it grill, and they put the meat back on there.
Yeah.
That grosses me.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about thawing. Okay. So a lot of people say, what's the safest way to thaw? There are 3 recommended ways to thaw. And the most recommended, as far as safety is concerned, method to thaw your especially your meat products, is to actually do it in the refrigerator. So you have to give yourself enough time. And the rule of thumb is about 5 pounds of frozen meat to 24 hours time frame you need to give yourself.
So you need to plan ahead, people.
You sure do. And it is not leave it in the sink to thaw anymore. Please do not do that because, of course, the outer perimeter of the, let's say, turkey will thaw a lot faster than the inside. And so what happens is that outside will reach an unsafe temperature. Unsafe means that bacteria is now going to grow crazy at fast rates and double in a short amount of time versus the inside, which is still not thawed. So this is why you want to give yourself enough time. So you still have time for a 10-pound turkey if you're making it on the 25th, because today's the 23rd.
But no more 20-pound turkeys.
Yeah, 20-pound, you should have been there a couple of days ago.
Right.
But I tell you what, you could do 2 10-pounders.
There you go.
If you have space, right? So it really, and that transposes into pork or beef. It's about 5 pounds. And I have found with a certain round roast, beef-wise, it actually took longer for my 5-pound roast than 24 hours. So it's an approximate, okay?
And I think it also depends on how cold your fridge is, too.
It probably does. And we're recommending your set temp in a refrigerator's 40 or less. And obviously, you don't want to see ice crystals. So it's, I've seen consistently refrigerators set at about 38. And that's honestly about right, okay? But you can go colder. You know, frankly, I don't think it's necessary because you're using a little more energy, too. And you don't want to see those ice crystals, especially in like your lettuce and your high water content.
Your delicate stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Items like your fruits and vegetables. Other methods to thaw. Let's get into, okay, so we said the refrigerator, safest, easiest method. We suggest to run cool water over product. So what I mean by that is not just using water and letting it sit in there. It has to be cold and it has to be running, okay? And I do know that this is the method that quite a few commercial kitchens I've been in utilize, and it's totally okay. And then the other one is actually, it is okay to thaw in the microwave. The key with the microwave, as well as with the running water method, is that you really do need to prepare it immediately. So this is a method that you're going to use maybe same day or something where you're then going to prep the meal and get it ready to go.
And with that, it's also important that you're rotating whatever meat you're thawing, because if you're running the water on one side of your turkey, that side of your turkey may thaw, but the underside isn't.
Yeah.
Same in the microwave, because microwaves only penetrate, 2 inches?
That's right.
And so you need to make sure that turkey or the roast or whatever you're thawing gets rotated so that it thaws at an even rate.
You know, and that's a good point. That even is the requirement when you're heating leftovers. Leftovers, especially when heated within the microwave, because it is so erratic in the way that it heats, you do need to constantly stir, and you should probe using your food thermometer. Again, if you don't have a food thermometer, call us at 221-6865, excuse me, Burley County Extension, and I'll get you one. We have a few in the office. Probe that reheated those leftovers, and you want to find a temperature of at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Especially if you're working with high-risk demographics like your children or your aging parents. Okay, so first 2 fundamentals, we've talked about cleaning your space when you're preparing your holiday meal. You also want to separate so you don't have risk of cross-contamination, because obviously the cooked food is coming out of the same place that your raw food started in. Okay, so that's the whole point, to prevent cross-contamination. Then the next element in our Fight Back campaign, Fight Bacteria, is cooking. Cooking, actually this can be a big subject, but really what we're talking about with both cooking and chilling is making sure that we're sound with the time and temperature relationship that we're working with. If you think about it, especially when you're preparing food, a temperature must always, there is no exception, be dependent on time. So if you think about just making a pizza, for example, some pizzas, frozen pizzas, call for 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of them call for 375 degrees Fahrenheit, but there's always a time associated. So if it's a higher temperature, it's usually less time. That's an example. And so let's get into, if you're cooking a turkey, specifically a turkey. Now, we have a nice publication with NDSU Extension. It's publication number FN, that's Foxtrot November 1443. And so you can just Google or use your search engine and find this publication on the Extension site. And in this publication, you're going to find out how to basically how much time you need. We do recommend, we're about to take a break here, we do recommend that you cook your turkey at a 325 degree temperature. And I guess I don't remember what we usually do for Thanksgiving. My mom's usually in charge for that.
Cooked a turkey in years.
Yeah, okay, 325. So I'm curious what your mom does when you come home. You'll have to tell me. And, different recipes may recommend different times or temperatures, but of course the time would then have to fluctuate. And so we'll get into a few more details here on how much time it takes at 325 degrees when your turkey is stuffed or when it's unstuffed. We'll be back.
Right now, it's 21.
Join me, Dr. Bob Martin, Sunday mornings at 11 on Super Talk 1270 KLXX. Learn about nutrition, diet, exercise, vitamins, mind-body medicine, and many other healing techniques, plus breaking health news. And enjoy special features such as the Health Outrage of the Week, Health Alternative of the Week, and Health Mystery of the Week. It's the Dr. Bob Martin Show, Sunday mornings, starting at 11 on Super Talk 1270 KLXX.
All right, welcome back to Extension Connection. This is Burleigh County Extension. We've been talking a little today about different things that you may encounter over the Christmas break. We talked at the beginning of the show about limiting screen time and some fun, cheap things to do with your kids. In the last couple segments, we've been talking about food safety because this is something that our office gets calls on every year,
very often.
Which is very good because that means people are thinking about it. So we talked about separating and we talked about cleaning. And right before the break, we started talking about cooking, which I think is probably one of the more important ones because you can't eat raw food.
You're right. This is so important. Yes. So cooking, how to safely cook over the holidays. And first of all, happy holidays. I don't even think we said that. This is a great time of year. But when you get into celebrating with your family and bringing your loved ones, your friends, anybody that you know over to your house, you always gather over food. So this is so important. Cooking, I was going to use the example of preparing turkey. We talked about how to safely thaw. So now that your bird is thawed, even if you're making a ham or a roast, we want to talk about the proper temperatures. So we talked about cooking a turkey at about 325 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter, it says. So it depends on, and you can follow your recipe's instructions. But if you're going with 325 degrees, just want to give you a couple guidelines as you're roasting your turkey. So if you have an 8 to 12 pound turkey, if it's unstuffed, you're going to need about 2 3/4 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes to 3 hours of cooking time. Gives you an idea of how far back you need to put that bird into the oven.
And that's cooking at 325.
That's 325. So if you're at 350, you might go down a little bit in time because we talked about how time and temperature are very related when it comes to both cooking and chilling. And actually, I can't even think of an instance in all the time that I've worked in food science where they're not related. So it's all about time and temperature, okay, to keep ourselves safe as we're prepping food. Now, if you happen to stuff your bird, I know my mom always stuffs her turkey, and she has a great stuffing recipe. For an 8 to 12 pound bird, unstuffed, about 2 hours, 45 minutes to 3 hours. Stuffed, give yourself another about half hour. So you need 3 hours to 3.5 hours. Okay, so if we're talking a 12 to 14 pound bird now, give yourself another about 45 minutes. 3 hours to 3 hours and 45 minutes. And then if it's stuffed, you go up to 3.5 to 4 hours. So you're giving yourself just about 15 more minutes. So that gives you an idea of how early you need to put your turkey into the oven.
And this, like Chandra had mentioned earlier, this is a very handy little chart that is available in one of our publications through NDSU Extension.
Right.
So you can find it on our website, or you can give us a call and we can shoot you an email to the link. Because I'm somebody who always likes to have those numbers right in front of me when
visual.
I'm cooking.
Me too.
And this is an excellent resource to have kind of shoved in the front of your cookbook as that added resource.
That's right. Yeah, so that's exactly right. Our phone number is 221-6865. And the reason why you might call us, in addition to grabbing our publication, is I do have a couple food thermometers. If you need one, it's probably the most important utensil you can have in your kitchen, especially if you're cooking for large groups. So let's get into, all right, so we were saying about, 3 hours for an 8 to 12 pound bird that's unstuffed at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. But what's the temperature that you should reach in the center? And so, of course, when we're talking about safe temperatures, we're talking about an internal temperature. So you need to probe with that food thermometer into the center of the bird. And we're usually saying into the center of the thigh muscle specifically for poultry. And we're looking for a temperature of at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. We're not concerned about the color. We're concerned about the temperature. And this goes across the board for beef, poultry, what have you.
And you want to make sure you're probing in a slightly different spot.
That's true.
You don't want to put the probe in the exact same spot because that's going to affect your reading.
That's right.
And you also want to watch for bones, right?
That's true. Bones are not going to have the same reading. That's why we say, the meaty portion of the thigh. So 165 degrees, there shouldn't be pink. Like I said, you don't want to only go off colors. Let's get into the temperatures as you're cooking for other species of meat. So if you're cooking ham, fresh ham, you want to cook it up to 145 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the same as beef, actually. They've now changed that in 2011. Beef and pork, same cook temperature. Now, specifically with beef, and actually all meat, meat is defined as beef, pork, lamb, and veal. You want to cook to 145 degrees Fahrenheit, and you should let that meat stand for 3 minutes before you slice it. So that means take it off the heat because you've seen 145 degrees and let it stand. It'll be hard for you to eat anyways, and it'll take you that long to plate it and to cut it. So let it stand for a few minutes, and that's the safest method. Okay, so if you're cooking ground beef, if you happen to throw some burgers on, you want to hit 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And I did mention for turkey, it's 165. So honestly, if you can't remember all these, the important thing is to, do a quick search on the internet if you can, or give us a call, 221-6865. Yeah, so that subject of cooking relative to time and temperature, so important. And actually, it's interesting here. I just thought I'd close out the example of cooking a turkey. It says, let the turkey stand for about 15 minutes for easier carving, which does make sense because, the hotter it is, the softer that tissue, it doesn't quite cut easily.
Right.
Yeah. So if it's a little more, harder as the muscles I'm going to say stiffen as they cool, it's easier to carve. Serve hot and finish serving within 2 hours, which is a good segue into our last fundamental to keep our kitchen safe over the holiday season. You want to make sure and chill within the appropriate time frame. So it's called chill, and what we mean is that you want to refrigerate anything that's left over, really if you can, immediately after your meal, but within 2 hours of cooking. We have enough research out there now that says get your leftovers into the fridge within 2 hours because that's about the time frame where the food is now in the danger zone temperature, which means that bacteria can double in number it's about 20 minutes. And so it will double every 20 minutes to the point in which there's enough there to get you sick now. And so get your food in to the refrigerator within 2 hours and you'll be safe. So and that 2 hours can creep up on you when you're talking.
It can, especially when you're serving a large group of people.
That's right.
And I found, Chandra and I were talking about leftovers in our office a few weeks ago. And my husband is one who will open and look at a leftover and smell a leftover. And that's how he decides whether it's good or not. So chances are, if you're cooking a big meal, if you're anything like me, I inherited my mother's amazing ability to cook for an entire army when there's only 6 people sitting at a table.
Yeah.
And so you have leftovers. So you kind of had a fun fact about
Yeah,
that.
so let's talk about that. You know, for all of you math people out there, it takes about 1 million cells of bacteria for your gut to start detecting it. In other words, you're going to get a stomach ache. You're going to get sick if there's about 1 million cells of bacteria as you consume a leftover that wasn't properly chilled. And it actually, that's 1 or 10 to the 6th, okay, for the math people. So at about 10 to the 7 is when food, especially I'm just thinking lunch meat, starts sliming. So you know that you shouldn't eat slimy meat because it's over what can make you sick. And it takes until about 10 to the 8th. So add 2 more zeros on there. So what is that, 100 million now?
Yep,
100 million before you can actually smell it and detect it with your smell sense.
Right.
So your eyes can detect it a little sooner than your smell. So the smell test, I tell you what, you're long gone, you're over with if you can smell it. So it's not the best test, but if you can, you definitely don't even want to get into tasting it.
And so after we get our food chilled, what is the recommended amount of time that food is consumed if we just keep it in the refrigerator?
Okay, that's a good question. And it really does depend on the food, but the higher risk foods like meat and cheese, we're talking about 3 to 4 days.
So
Okay.
not that long.
No, it's not.
So make turkey enchiladas with your leftover
Make
turkey.
something. Make soup. Soup is a great choice. It's warming. It's comforting. You can throw a lot of things together. You can use your bones, and I highly recommend your bones to make soup because especially with beef bones, you have that marrow, which is really life-sustaining. It gives you energy.
Yeah, I like to take, if I have a lot of extra like turkey left over, I make some turkey enchiladas and we eat one pan that night and then the other pan I freeze so I have an easy meal.
Yeah.
So because it will last longer in the freezer versus in the refrigerator.
Right. So, you know, I just want to mention, so you can use a slow cooker to hold your hot foods hot. That's certainly an option because then you can buy yourself some more time. And that, of course, is above that minimum temperature. But, you know, if that slow cooker, if you turn it off, you still have about only 2 hours to get it cooled down and out of that and into the refrigerator. Well, you know, that finishes up this segment today. I really want to welcome home anybody who has served in the military. Anybody, I know, Amelia, you said your brother from the Air Force is coming home, which is so exciting.
He's currently on the road, which
I'm
is
not
super
expecting my brother from the Marines yet. I do know that he's out in Washington State, and he's on fire watch because we know they had a lot of them. But I tell you, if you have anybody coming home this season, give them an extra squeeze from me and Amelia, too.
Yes, and thank them for everything that they have done for our country.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, happy holidays, happy new year.
Yes.
Have a great holiday season and enjoy the time home with your kids.
And get your kids out there and play in the snow with some of that.
Yes.